Let's start by imagining a busy street in a big city. Cars honk their horns. People rush past each other, heads down, looking at their phones or trying to get somewhere fast. The smell of hot dogs from a food cart mixes with the sound of footsteps on the sidewalk. It's noisy, crowded, and full of life. In the middle of all this chaos stands a woman. She looks different from everyone else around her. Her hands hold a white cane, tapping gently against the ground as she walks. Her eyes are closed, but not because she's sleeping. They're always closed because she cannot see. She is blind. Now, most people might think that being blind makes someone weak or helpless. After all, how can you take care of yourself if you can't see where you're going? But let me tell you something important right away: this woman is far from weak. In fact, she's stronger than almost anyone else on that street. Her name is Elena Vega. To strangers passing by, she seems quiet and calm. Some might even feel sorry for her. Poor thing, they might whisper. It must be so hard to live without sight. What they don't realize is that Elena has trained herself to notice things others miss. While most people rely on their eyes to understand the world, Elena uses her ears, her sense of touch, and her sharp mind. Every little detail matters to her: the sound of footsteps, the rustle of leaves, the hum of engines. All these clues help her picture the world around her, even though she can't see it. Elena wasn't always blind. Once upon a time, she could see just like you and me. Back then, she worked as a combat instructor. That means she taught soldiers and police officers how to fight and protect themselves. She was really good at her job. So good, in fact, that people came from all over the country to learn from her. But one day, everything changed. An accident happened, a terrible accident that took away her ability to see. At first, Elena felt lost. How could she teach fighting skills if she couldn't watch her students? How could she defend herself if she couldn't see danger coming? For weeks, she stayed inside her house, feeling angry and sad. Then, something amazing happened. Elena decided she wouldn't give up. Instead, she started training again, but this time, she focused on using her other senses. She learned how to hear tiny movements, like the shuffle of feet or the click of a weapon being loaded. She practiced moving smoothly and confidently, even in complete darkness. Slowly but surely, she became better than ever before. By the time we meet her in this story, Elena has turned her blindness into a kind of superpower. She knows exactly how to handle herself in any situation. And yet, no one suspects this about her. To them, she's just another person struggling to cross the street. While Elena taps her cane along the sidewalk, a loud rumbling noise fills the air. It's getting closer and closer. Suddenly, a group of bikers zooms into view. Their motorcycles roar like giant beasts, shaking the ground beneath their wheels. These bikers aren't ordinary riders, they're troublemakers. They love causing chaos wherever they go. The leader of the group is a tall, muscular man with tattoos covering his arms. His leather jacket has patches sewn onto it, showing off symbols that mean he belongs to a gang. He grins as he parks his bike near the corner store. His friends follow him, laughing and shouting jokes. One of them points at Elena. "Hey, check out that lady," he says, nudging the leader. "She's blind. Look at her walking with that stick." The leader smirks. "Yeah, she's probably scared of us," he replies. "Let's have some fun with her." At first, they just tease her. One biker revs his engine loudly, making her jump a little. Another throws a crumpled up candy wrapper at her feet. They laugh, thinking it's hilarious. But Elena doesn't react. She keeps walking, her cane tapping steadily against the pavement. Inside, though, she's paying close attention. She hears every word they say. She feels the vibrations of their bikes. She notices how close they are getting. Why isn't she screaming, One of the bikers asks. Most people would freak out by now. She's probably too scared to move, another answers. What they don't know is that Elena isn't scared at all. In fact, she's starting to get annoyed. These men think they're tough because they ride loud bikes and act mean. But Elena has faced much scarier situations in her life. As the bikers continue to mock her, Elena stops walking. She turns her head slightly, listening carefully. Then, she speaks in a calm, clear voice. If you want to keep playing your games, that's fine. But don't expect me to run away. When Elena spoke those calm but firm words, if you want to keep playing your games, that's fine. But don't expect me to run away, the bikers froze for a moment. They weren't used to people standing up to them, especially someone who seemed so ordinary. To them, Elena was just a blind woman with a cane. How could she possibly stand her ground against a group of tough guys on motorcycles? But Elena wasn't ordinary. Not at all. Let's take a closer look at what makes her special and why she isn't afraid of these bullies. Elena grew up in a small town where everyone knew each other. Her family didn't have much money, but they were happy. From a young age, Elena loved sports. She played soccer, ran track, and even joined a karate class when she was 10 years old. At first, she took karate because it looked cool. But soon, she discovered something amazing. It made her feel strong. Karate taught Elena how to focus. It showed her how to use her body in ways she never thought possible. By the time she was a teenager, she had earned her black belt. That's the highest rank you can get in karate. People started calling her a little warrior because she was so good at fighting. After high school, Elena decided to turn her passion into a career. She became a combat instructor, teaching soldiers and police officers how to protect themselves. These were grown ups whose jobs involved danger every single day. And yet, they came to Elena for advice because she was one of the best. Then came the accident, the event that changed everything. Elena was driving home late one night after a long day of training. The roads were icy, and another car skidded out of control, crashing into hers. She survived, but the crash damaged her eyes so badly that doctors said she would never see again. At first, Elena felt like her life was over. How could she teach self-defense if she couldn't see her students? How could she fight if she couldn't see her opponent? For weeks, she stayed indoors, feeling sorry for herself. But deep down, she knew giving up wasn't an option. So, Elena began retraining herself. She practiced listening carefully to sounds around her. She learned how to feel movements in the air, like when someone swings their arm or steps forward. She memorized layouts of rooms and streets so she could move confidently without bumping into things. Over time, she realized that losing her sight didn't make her weak, it made her sharper. By the time we meet her in this story, Elena has become unstoppable. She may not be able to see, but she notices details most people miss. She hears whispers from across the room. She feels vibrations through the ground. She senses tension in someone's voice before they even speak. And now, here she is, facing off against a gang of rowdy bikers who think they're untouchable. Let's talk about the bikers for a moment. Who are they, and why do they act the way they do? The leader of the group is named Jake. He's tall, muscular, and covered in tattoos. His bike is bigger and louder than anyone else's, which he thinks makes him the toughest guy around. Jake loves attention. He thrives on making people scared of him. Whether it's speeding through red lights or yelling insults at strangers, Jake does whatever he wants, whenever he wants. Jake's friends are just as bad. There's Tony, who likes throwing trash at people for fun. Then there's Mark, who laughs the loudest at Jake's jokes, even when they're mean. Together, they form a pack, a group of troublemakers who feed off each other's energy. What these bikers don't realize is that their behavior comes from insecurity. Deep down, they're not as confident as they seem. They pick on others because it makes them feel powerful. They tease and bully because it distracts from their own fears and weaknesses. When they see Elena walking down the street with her cane, they immediately assume she's an easy target. After all, she's blind. She can't see them sneering or rolling their eyes. She can't dodge if they throw something at her. Or so they think. Jake leans toward Elena, his face inches from hers. "Hey, lady," he says, his voice dripping with sarcasm. "Need some help crossing the street?" His friends burst out laughing. One of them shouts, "Yeah, maybe we should hold your hand." Elena doesn't flinch. She tilts her head slightly, listening to their voices. She hears the smirk in Jake's tone. She feels the tension in the air. Without saying a word, she knows exactly what kind of people these bikers are. "You shouldn't underestimate me," she says quietly. Her voice is calm, almost too soft to hear. But her words carry weight. Jake frowns, confused. He expected Elena to beg for mercy or cry. Instead, she's standing tall, unshaken by their taunts. "What did you say?" he asks, leaning closer. Elena repeats herself, louder this time. "I said, you shouldn't underestimate me." For the first time, Jake hesitates. Something about Elena's confidence makes him uneasy. He glances at his friends, unsure of what to do next. Now, let's pause for a moment and think about what might happen next. Imagine you're watching the scene unfold. You see Elena, a blind woman with a cane, standing calmly despite being surrounded by loud, aggressive bikers. On one side, you have Jake and his gang, convinced they're in control. On the other side, you have Elena, radiating quiet strength. Who do you think will win? The truth is, neither side knows what's coming. The bikers believe they're dealing with someone helpless. They have no idea that Elena has spent years honing her skills, learning how to fight without relying on her eyes. Meanwhile, Elena isn't looking for a fight, but she won't back down if pushed too far. As the tension builds, the crowd around them grows larger. Pedestrians stop to watch, whispering to each other. Some pull out their phones to record the confrontation. No one knows whether to cheer for Elena or call for help. Jake grabs Elena's cane, yanking it out of her hand. "Let's see how brave you are without this," he sneers, tossing it aside. For a split second, Elena stands still. Then, she smiles, a small, knowing smile that sends chills down Jake's spine. "You really shouldn't have done that," she says. And just like that, the game changes. After Jake tosses Elena's cane aside, the mood shifts. The bikers think they've won already. They laugh louder, their voices echoing off the buildings around them. "Look at her now," one of them shouts. "What's she gonna do? Stand there like a statue?" But Elena doesn't move. She stays perfectly still, her head tilted slightly as if she's listening to something only she can hear. Her calmness makes the bikers uneasy. They expected her to panic, to beg for her cane back, or to cry. Instead, she just stands there, waiting. Jake steps closer, his boots scraping against the pavement. "Come on, lady," he says, his voice mocking. "You're blind. You can't fight us. Just admit it and maybe we'll leave you alone." Elena doesn't answer right away. She takes a deep breath, her fingers brushing lightly against the air. Then, in a clear, steady voice, she says, "I don't need my cane to handle people like you." The bikers exchange glances. What does she mean by that? Is she bluffing? Or is she actually serious? Tony, the biker who likes throwing trash, decides to test her. He picks up an empty soda can from the ground and hurls it at her. It flies through the air, spinning toward her face. Most people would duck or cover their heads. But not Elena. Without even looking, she raises her hand and catches the can mid-air. The crowd gasps. Even the bikers are stunned into silence. How did she? Tony starts to say, but he stops himself. Elena lowers the can slowly, her expression unreadable. Is that all you've got? She asks, her tone almost bored. Jake clenches his fists. This isn't going the way he planned. He thought scaring Elena would be easy, but now he feels like he's losing control of the situation. All right, fine, he growls. If you're so tough, let's see what you can do. He signals to his friends, and they start circling tighter around Elena. The circle gets smaller and smaller until there's barely any space left between them. Their motorcycles rumble behind them, adding to the noise and chaos. To anyone watching, it looks like Elena is trapped. There's no way out. But Elena knows better. She's been in worse situations before. Let's pause for a moment and talk about why Elena refuses to back down. When Elena lost her sight, she had two choices. She could either give up and let the world treat her like a victim, or she could adapt and find new ways to survive. She chose the second option. Every day since the accident, Elena has worked hard to turn her blindness into an advantage. She learned how to use her other senses to understand the world around her. For example, she can tell how far away someone is just by listening to the sound of their footsteps. If someone moves quickly, she hears the rush of air. If someone speaks softly, she notices the hesitation in their voice. Elena also trained herself to stay calm under pressure. When most people feel scared or angry, their bodies tense up. Their hearts race. Their minds go blank. But Elena practices staying relaxed, even in dangerous situations. This helps her think clearly and act fast. Another reason Elena doesn't back down is because she believes in fairness. She knows the bikers are picking on her because they think she's weak. But Elena doesn't believe in letting bullies win. She knows standing up to them might inspire others to do the same. So, when Jake and his gang try to intimidate her, Elena doesn't feel afraid. She feels determined. Determined to show them that they've made a huge mistake. As the tension grows, more and more people stop to watch. Some pull out their phones to record the scene. Others whisper nervously to each other. Do you think she'll be okay? A woman asks her friend. I don't know, the friend replies. Those bikers look really mean. A man nearby shakes his head. Someone should call the police, he mutters. But no one makes a move. This happens often when people witness bullying. They want to help, but they're scared of getting hurt themselves. So instead of stepping in, they stand back and hope someone else will take action. Elena notices the crowd gathering. She can hear their whispers and the clicks of their phone cameras. She knows they're curious about what will happen next. Part of her wishes someone would step forward and offer support. But another part of her knows she can't rely on strangers. She has to handle this herself. Finally, Jake loses patience. Enough of this, he yells. Let's teach her a lesson. He lunges forward, reaching out to grab Elena's arm. But before he can touch her, she sidesteps smoothly, dodging his grasp. The crowd gasps again. How did she know where Jake was going to move? Elena doesn't stop there. As Jake stumbles past her, she reaches out and taps him lightly on the shoulder. It's not a hard hit, but it's enough to make him stumble. What the Jake spins around, his face red with anger. His friends cheer him on. Get her, Jake. Show her who's boss. But Elena isn't intimidated. She listens carefully to their movements, her body poised and ready. One of the bikers tries to sneak up behind her. He thinks she won't notice. But Elena hears his footsteps and turns just in time to block his punch. With a quick twist of her wrist, she grabs his arm and flips him onto the ground. The crowd erupts into cheers. Wow, did you see that? Someone shouts. Jake stares at his fallen friend, his confidence wavering. He didn't expect Elena to fight back, and certainly not this well. Now, the real battle begins. Jake realizes he underestimated Elena, and he's furious about it. He charges at her again, swinging wildly. But Elena dodges every attack, moving gracefully like water flowing around rocks. Each time Jake misses, his frustration grows. His friends try to join in, but Elena anticipates their moves. She uses their own momentum against them, sending them crashing to the ground one by one. By now, the crowd is completely captivated. Phones flash as people record the incredible scene. Some clap and cheer for Elena, while others hold their breath, wondering if she'll manage to defeat all the bikers. Jake is the last one standing. He backs away, breathing heavily. "Who are you?" he demands, his voice shaking. Elena smiles faintly. "My name is Elena Vega," she says. "And you picked the wrong person to mess with." Jake is breathing hard now. His chest rises and falls quickly as he tries to catch his breath. He's angry not just because Elena is beating him and his friends, but because she's doing it so easily. It's like she's playing with them, showing them how weak they really are. For years, Jake has been the toughest guy in his group. People have always been scared of him. But now, for the first time, he feels powerless. He doesn't understand how Elena can fight without seeing. How does she know where to move? How does she dodge every punch and kick? Elena stands calmly, her hands relaxed at her sides. She tilts her head slightly, listening to Jake's heavy breathing. "You still don't get it, do you?" she says softly. "Get what?" Jake snaps, his voice sharp and defensive. "That being loud and mean doesn't make you strong," Elena replies. "It just makes you predictable." The crowd murmurs in agreement. Some people nod their heads, while others whisper to each other about how smart Elena sounds. Jake grits his teeth. He doesn't want to listen to her words. All he wants is to win, to prove that he's better than her. So, he charges forward again, swinging his fists wildly. But Elena isn't afraid. She hears the rush of air as Jake's fist comes toward her. With a quick step to the side, she avoids the punch completely. Then, before Jake can recover, she grabs his arm and twists it gently but firmly behind his back. Jake yelps in surprise. "Let go of me," he shouts, struggling to break free. But Elena holds him steady. "I'm not hurting you," she says calmly. "I'm just showing you that you're not as tough as you think." The crowd cheers louder than ever. They've never seen anything like this before, a blind woman taking down a gang of bikers all by herself. As Jake struggles in Elena's grip, some of the onlookers start asking questions. "Who is this woman?" one man wonders aloud. "She's incredible," another person adds. Elena releases Jake, letting him stumble backward. He glares at her, his face red with embarrassment. Before anyone can say anything else, Elena speaks up. "My name is Elena Vega," she says, her voice clear and confident. "I used to teach combat skills to soldiers and police officers. I trained them to protect themselves and others. And even though I lost my sight, I didn't lose my ability to fight." The crowd listens intently. Some people look amazed, while others seem inspired. "I learned how to use my ears instead of my eyes," Elena continues. "I can hear your footsteps, your breathing, even the way you shift your weight before you move. To me, sound paints a picture of the world around me. And that's why I'm not afraid of people like you." Her words hit Jake hard. For the first time, he realizes that Elena isn't just physically strong, she's mentally strong too. She sees the world differently, and that gives her an edge over everyone else. One of the fallen bikers groans as he tries to stand up. "This isn't fair," he mutters. "She's cheating somehow." Elena shakes her head. "There's no cheating in self-defense," she says. "You picked a fight with someone you thought was weak. That was your mistake. By now, the crowd has grown even bigger. More people have gathered to watch the showdown between Elena and the bikers. At first, most of them were silent, unsure of what to do. But as Elena proves herself stronger and braver than the bullies, they begin to feel inspired. A young boy tugs on his mother's sleeve. "Mom, she's amazing," he says excitedly. "Yes, she is," the mother agrees, smiling. An older man steps forward, clapping his hands. "You tell them, miss," he calls out to Elena. Others join in, cheering loudly. "Go, Elena. Show them who's boss." The bikers glance nervously at each other. They're used to intimidating people, not being intimidated themselves. Now, surrounded by a crowd that's rooting for Elena, they feel outnumbered and exposed. Tony, the biker who threw the soda can earlier, tries to sneak away. But Elena hears him moving. "Where do you think you're going?" she asks sharply. Tony freezes, his face pale. Nowhere," he stammers. "You started this," Elena reminds him. "Now you're going to finish it." Reluctantly, Tony shuffles back to his friends. None of them dare to run anymore. They know there's no escape, not with Elena watching their every move. As the confrontation continues, something interesting happens. The bikers start to realize that they've made a huge mistake. They thought Elena was an easy target because she's blind. But now they see that she's far from helpless. Mark, the biker who laughed the loudest at Jake's jokes, looks ashamed. He lowers his head, avoiding eye contact with anyone. Tony rubs the back of his neck awkwardly. "We didn't mean to," he starts to say, but he trails off. "You didn't mean to what?" Elena prompts him. "To hurt you," Tony finishes quietly. Elena raises an eyebrow. "Really? Because throwing things at someone and mocking them sounds pretty mean to me." Tony doesn't respond. He knows she's right. Jake, meanwhile, is still fuming. He doesn't want to admit defeat, but he also doesn't know what to do next. He's never faced someone like Elena before, someone who fights back with both skill and wisdom. Finally, Jake speaks up. "Okay, fine," he growls. "You win. We'll leave you alone." Elena nods. "Good choice," she says simply. But she doesn't stop there. She takes a step closer to Jake, her voice firm but kind. "I hope you learned something today," she tells him. "Bullying might make you feel powerful for a little while, but it doesn't make you strong. Real strength comes from treating others with respect." Jake stares at her, his expression unreadable. For a moment, it seems like he might argue. But then he sighs, looking defeated. "Yeah, okay," he mutters. Just as the bikers start to slink away, the sound of sirens fills the air. 2 police cars pull up to the scene, their lights flashing brightly. Officers step out, surveying the situation. "What's going on here?" one officer asks, his hand resting on his holster. Several members of the crowd rush forward to explain. "These bikers were harassing that woman," a man says, pointing at Elena. "But she fought back and took them down." The officer turns to Elena. "Is that true, ma'am?" he asks. Elena nods. "Yes, it is," she confirms. "They tried to intimidate me, but I defended myself." The officer studies her for a moment, then nods approving. "That's impressive." He turns to the bikers, who are standing sullenly nearby. "All right, you lot," he says sternly. "You're coming with us." As the officers handcuff the bikers and lead them to the patrol cars, the crowd erupts into applause. People cheer for Elena, thanking her for standing up to the bullies. One woman approaches Elena hesitantly. "Excuse me," she says. "Can I shake your hand?" Elena smiles warmly. "Of course," she replies. The woman takes Elena's hand, shaking it firmly. "Thank you for showing us that we don't have to be afraid of people like them," she says. Elena nods. "Remember," she tells the woman, "we all have the power to stand up for ourselves and others. Sometimes, it just takes courage to use it." As the police officers load the bikers into their cars, the crowd continues to cheer for Elena. People clap, whistle, and shout words of encouragement. Some even ask for her autograph or try to take selfies with her. But Elena stays calm. She doesn't seek attention or praise. Instead, she focuses on what matters most, making sure justice is served. One officer walks over to her, holding a notepad. "Ma'am, can you tell us exactly what happened?" he asks politely. Elena nods. "Of course," she says. Then, in clear and simple words, she explains how the bikers harassed her, threw things at her, and tried to intimidate her. She describes how they underestimated her because of her blindness and how that led to their downfall. The officer listens carefully, nodding along. When Elena finishes, he looks at her with admiration. "You handled yourself incredibly well," he says. "Not many people could have done what you did." Elena smiles faintly. "I didn't do anything special," she replies. "I just defended myself." But the officer isn't convinced. He leans closer, lowering his voice slightly. "Actually, there's something else I need to tell you," he says. Elena tilts her head, curious. "What is it?" The officer hesitates for a moment, then speaks. "We've been looking for these guys for weeks. They're part of a gang that's caused trouble all over the city. Assaults, vandalism, theft, you name it. You just helped us catch some very dangerous criminals." The crowd overhears this and gasps. Whispers ripple through the group as people realize the full scope of what just happened. "She took down a whole gang," someone exclaims. "No wonder she was so confident," another person adds. Elena listens quietly, letting the information sink in. She knew the bikers were troublemakers, but she didn't realize they were wanted criminals. Still, she doesn't feel proud of herself. She simply feels relieved that they won't be able to hurt anyone else anytime soon. While the officers finish processing the bikers, Elena takes a moment to reflect on everything that's happened. She thinks about how quickly people judged her based on her appearance. To the bikers, she was just a blind woman, an easy target. To the crowd, she was an ordinary stranger until she proved otherwise. But Elena knows better than anyone that appearances can be deceiving. Being blind has taught her to rely on her other senses, which gives her a unique perspective on the world. For example, when Jake charged at her, she didn't see him coming, but she heard his heavy footsteps and felt the vibration of his movement through the ground. When Tony threw the soda can, she tracked its path by listening to the whistling sound it made as it flew through the air. And when Mark sneaked up behind her, she smelled the cigarette smoke clinging to his clothes. These small details might seem insignificant to most people, but to Elena, they paint a vivid picture of her surroundings. It's almost like having a sixth sense, one that allows her to anticipate danger before it arrives. Elena shares this insight with the crowd. "People often think blindness makes me weak," she says. "But it actually makes me stronger. I notice things others miss. I hear whispers, feel vibrations, and sense tension. These skills have saved my life more times than I can count." Her words inspire the crowd. A young girl steps forward, her eyes wide with wonder. "Does that mean I could learn to do what you do?" she asks shyly. Elena kneels down so she's eye level with the girl. "Absolutely," she says warmly. "Anyone can learn to pay attention to the world around them. It just takes practice." The girl beams, clearly thrilled by the idea. Her parents thank Elena for encouraging their daughter, and soon, others start asking questions too. Word of the incident spreads quickly. Within minutes, news vans arrive on the scene, their cameras rolling and microphones ready. Reporters rush toward Elena, eager to interview her. "Miss Vega, can we get your side of the story?" one reporter asks, shoving a microphone in her face. Elena pauses, considering her response. She knows this is her chance to share an important message, not just about standing up to bullies, but about embracing who you are, no matter what challenges you face. "Yes," she says finally. "But let me make one thing clear, I'm not a hero. I'm just someone who refused to let others define me." The reporters scribble notes furiously, hanging on her every word. Elena continues, speaking slowly and clearly so everyone can understand. "When I lost my sight, I had two choices. I could either give up or adapt. I chose to adapt. I learned how to use my ears instead of my eyes, my hands instead of my cane. I trained myself to stay calm under pressure and to trust my instincts. And now, I'm sharing my story to remind others that they're capable of overcoming obstacles too." Her speech resonates deeply with the crowd. People nod in agreement, some wiping away tears. A reporter raises her hand. "Do you think this experience will change how people view disabilities?" she asks. Elena smiles thoughtfully. "I hope so," she replies. "Disabilities don't define us. They're just part of who we are. What truly defines us is how we choose to live our lives with courage, kindness, and resilience." The reporters applaud, impressed by her wisdom. They bombard her with more questions, but Elena keeps her answers short and meaningful. Meanwhile, the bikers sit glum time brooding silently. Their arrogance has vanished, replaced by shame and regret. As they wait to be taken to the station, they overhear snippets of conversations from the crowd. "Did you hear? Those guys are part of a gang. They got what they deserved. I can't believe a blind woman took them down." Each comment stings more than the last. Jake stares at the ground, avoiding eye contact with anyone. For once, he doesn't have a smart remark or a cocky grin. Tony leans back against the seat, shaking his head. "This is all your fault," he mutters to Jake. Jake scowls. "My fault? You were the one throwing trash at her. And you were the one mocking her." Tony shoots back. Their argument escalates, but a stern look from one of the officers silences them. As the patrol car drives away, the bikers reflect on their actions. For years, they bullied and intimidated others without facing consequences. But today, they met someone who wasn't afraid of them, and it changed everything. Later that evening, the local news broadcasts Elena's story. Footage of the confrontation goes viral, inspiring millions of viewers worldwide. Social media explodes with hashtags like #BlindButUnstoppable and #StandUpToBullies. People praise Elena not only for her bravery but also for her humility. Despite defeating a gang of dangerous criminals, she remains modest and kind. In interviews, Elena emphasizes the importance of treating others with respect. "Bullying hurts everyone," she says. "It damages the victim, and it corrupts the bully. The only way to break the cycle is to choose kindness over cruelty." Her message strikes a chord with audiences of all ages. Schools invite her to speak to students about anti-bullying efforts. Community centers host workshops where she teaches self-defense techniques tailored for people with disabilities. Elena becomes a symbol of hope and empowerment, a living reminder that true strength comes from within. Elena's story doesn't just stop with the news coverage or social media buzz. It creates a ripple effect, touching lives far beyond the streets where the incident occurred. People from all walks of life, students, teachers, parents, and even strangers halfway across the world, are inspired by her courage and resilience. One of the most profound impacts is felt in schools. Teachers use Elena's story as an example during anti-bullying campaigns. They show videos of her standing up to the bikers and discuss how she turned her perceived weakness into strength. In one classroom, a teacher asks her students, "What can we learn from Elena?" A boy raises his hand. "That it's okay to be different," he says confidently. That's right, the teacher agrees. And what else? Another student chimes in. That we shouldn't judge people based on how they look. The teacher smiles. Exactly. Elena reminds us that everyone has value, no matter what challenges they face. Meanwhile, parents share Elena's story with their children at home. One mother tells her daughter, if someone tries to bully you, remember Elena. She didn't let those bikers scare her, and neither should you. The daughter nods thoughtfully. I want to be brave like her, she says. Even adults find inspiration in Elena's journey. A man who recently lost his job after an injury watches an interview with her and feels a renewed sense of hope. If she can overcome blindness and still stand tall, he thinks, then maybe I can get through this too. Elena's influence spreads like wildfire, sparking conversations about kindness, respect, and inner strength. Her actions remind people that heroes aren't always the ones wearing capes, they're often ordinary individuals who choose to do extraordinary things. Amidst all the attention and praise, Elena takes time to reflect on her own emotions. While she's grateful for the positive impact her story has had, she also feels a deep sense of personal victory. For years, Elena struggled with feelings of inadequacy after losing her sight. She wondered if she'd ever feel whole again. But today, she realizes that her blindness isn't a limitation, it's a gift. It taught her patience, focus, and the importance of listening not just to sounds, but to her instincts and heart. As she sits alone in her apartment later that evening, Elena closes her eyes, though they're already closed, and lets herself smile. She remembers the moment when Jake and his gang underestimated her. She recalls the look on their faces when they realized she wasn't afraid of them. And she thinks about the crowd cheering for her, celebrating her triumph. It's not about proving anything to others, she whispers to herself. It's about proving something to myself. Elena knows she'll face challenges in the future. Life will never be easy, especially for someone living without sight. But she also knows she has the tools to handle whatever comes her way. Her phone buzzes with notifications, messages from friends, family, and even strangers thanking her for inspiring them. She reads a few before turning off the device. Thank you, she murmurs softly, addressing the unseen supporters. While Elena enjoys a quiet evening reflecting on her victory, the bikers are dealing with the fallout of their actions. At the police station, they're booked for harassment, assault, and gang-related crimes. Their mugshots are taken, and their names are added to a growing list of wanted criminals. Jake sits in a holding cell, staring blankly at the wall. His mind replays the events of the day over and over again. He can't shake the image of Elena dodging his punches, flipping his friends to the ground, and speaking to him with calm authority. She made me look like a fool, he mutters under his breath. Tony overhears him and snorts. You are a fool, he retorts. We all are. We thought we were untouchable, and look where that got us. Mark, sitting silently in the corner, finally speaks up. Maybe we deserved this, he says quietly. Jake glares at him. Deserved what? To get beat up by a blind woman. No, Mark replies firmly. To lose. We've been hurting people for years, thinking we were better than them. But today, we met someone who was actually stronger than us, not physically, but mentally. She didn't need to fight dirty or cheat. She just stood her ground and showed us who we really are. The room falls silent as the weight of Mark's words sinks in. For the first time, the bikers begin to see themselves through Elena's eyes. They realize they've spent their lives seeking power through intimidation, only to discover that true strength lies in treating others with respect. The next morning, the bikers appear in court for their initial hearing. The judge listens carefully as prosecutors outline the charges against them. Evidence including video footage recorded by bystanders is presented, leaving little room for doubt about their guilt. You have caused harm and fear in our community, the judge says sternly. Your behavior will not be tolerated. Each biker is sentenced to jail time, community service, and mandatory counseling sessions focused on anger management and empathy training. Outside the courthouse, reporters swarm the officers involved in the case. "Do you think this will send a message to other gangs?" one asks. "I certainly hope so," an officer replies. This case proves that no matter how tough someone seems, there's always accountability for their actions. The public reacts positively to the verdict. Many feel a sense of closure knowing that justice has been served. Some even write letters to Elena, thanking her for helping bring dangerous individuals to justice. In the weeks following the incident, Elena becomes a household name. Schools, community centers, and organizations invite her to speak about her experiences. She uses these opportunities to spread messages of empowerment, resilience, and inclusivity. At one event, a young boy approaches her timidly. "I'm scared of bullies at my school," he confesses. Elena kneels down to meet his gaze. "Being scared is normal," she reassures him. "But remember, bullies thrive on fear. When you stand up to them, even if it's just by telling a teacher or walking away, you take away their power." The boy nods, looking slightly more confident. "Thanks, Miss Vega," he says. Elena pats his shoulder gently. "Anytime." Her work extends beyond speeches and workshops. She partners with advocacy groups to create programs that support people with disabilities. Together, they develop self-defense classes, mentorship initiatives, and awareness campaigns designed to break stereotypes and promote equality. Through it all, Elena remains humble. She doesn't seek fame or fortune, she simply wants to make the world a better place one person at a time. After the incident with the bikers, life begins to settle back into a routine for Elena. The streets where the confrontation took place are quieter now. People who once hurried past without noticing each other now greet one another with smiles. It's as if Elena's actions have sparked a small but meaningful change in the community. For Elena, things are different too, but not because she's suddenly famous. Sure, people recognize her when she walks down the street, and some even stop to thank her for inspiring them. But what really changes is how she feels about herself. Before the encounter with the bikers, Elena sometimes doubted whether she could truly live a full life without sight. She worried that others would always see her as weak or helpless. Now, she knows better. She's proven to herself and to the world that being blind doesn't limit her potential. If anything, it enhances her abilities. One morning, as Elena taps her cane along the sidewalk, a woman approaches her. "Excuse me," the woman says hesitantly. "Are you Elena Vega?" Elena nods. "Yes, I am." The woman beams. "I just wanted to say thank you. My son was being bullied at school, and your story gave him the courage to stand up for himself. He told his teacher, and now those bullies have been dealt with." Elena smiles warmly. "I'm glad to hear that," she replies. "Standing up for yourself isn't always easy, but it's worth it." The woman thanks her again before walking away. As Elena continues her journey, she reflects on how much impact one act of bravery can have. While Elena moves forward with confidence, the bikers face a very different reality. Locked away in separate cells, they spend their days reflecting on their choices. At first, they're angry not just at Elena, but at themselves. They feel humiliated, defeated, and trapped. Jake, the leader of the gang, struggles the most. He spends hours replaying the confrontation in his mind, wondering where he went wrong. Why did he underestimate Elena? Why didn't he see her strength sooner? During one of his counseling sessions, Jake opens up to his therapist. "I thought I was tough," he admits bitterly. "But she made me look like nothing." His therapist nods understandingly. "How do you think she did that?" Jake shrugs. "She was smart. Strong. Brave. Everything I'm not." "That's not true," the therapist counters gently. You're capable of being all those things too if you choose to be. The question is, what kind of person do you want to be moving forward? Jake sits quietly, letting the words sink in. For the first time, he considers the possibility of change. Meanwhile, Tony and Mark attend similar sessions. Both men struggle with guilt and regret, but they also begin to understand the harm they've caused. Slowly, they start to envision a future where they treat others with kindness instead of cruelty. Back in the neighborhood, the community rallies around Elena's message of resilience and respect. Schools launch anti-bullying campaigns inspired by her story. Teachers encourage students to speak up if they witness bullying and to support victims rather than staying silent. At one elementary school, a group of 5th graders creates posters featuring Elena's face alongside slogans like "Be brave like Elena" and "Kindness wins." They hang the posters in hallways and classrooms, sparking conversations about empathy and inclusion. In another part of town, a local gym offers free self-defense classes for women and children. The instructor dedicates the program to Elena, saying, "If a blind woman can defend herself against a gang of bikers, anyone can learn to protect themselves." Even businesses get involved. A cafe near the scene of the incident starts serving a special drink called the Unstoppable Latte, with proceeds going to organizations that support people with disabilities. Customers love the idea, and soon, the cafe becomes a hub for discussions about equality and empowerment. Through these efforts, Elena's influence grows far beyond what she ever imagined. She may have started as an ordinary woman walking down the street, but she's become a symbol of hope and strength for countless people. As demand for her insights increases, Elena decides to embrace her newfound role as a mentor and advocate. She partners with local organizations to create programs that empower people facing challenges, whether physical, emotional, or social. One of her first projects is a series of workshops called Finding Your Strength. In these sessions, Elena shares practical tips for navigating difficult situations, such as staying calm under pressure and trusting your instincts. She also emphasizes the importance of self-worth, reminding participants that their value isn't determined by what others think of them. During one workshop, a teenage girl raises her hand. "What if people still judge me no matter what I do?" she asks nervously. Elena leans forward, her expression thoughtful. "People will always have opinions," she says. "But those opinions don't define you. What matters is how you see yourself. If you believe in your own strength, no one can take that away from you." The girl nods, looking relieved. Another participant, an older man who recently lost his job, shares his struggles with depression. "I feel useless," he admits. Elena listens carefully before responding. "Losing something important doesn't make you useless," she says. "It just means you have to find new ways to contribute. You still have skills, talents, and experiences that can help others. Don't give up on yourself." Her words resonate deeply with the group. By the end of the session, many participants feel inspired to tackle their challenges head-on. While the bikers serve their sentences, the justice system takes additional steps to address the root causes of their behavior. Community service requirements include tasks like cleaning parks, mentoring at-risk youth, and participating in restorative justice programs. These activities aim to teach the bikers accountability while giving them opportunities to make amends. For example, Jake spends several weekends volunteering at a shelter for homeless veterans. At first, he resents the work, grumbling about having to clean floors and serve meals. But over time, he begins to connect with the residents. He hears their stories of hardship and resilience, and he starts to see parallels between their struggles and his own. One veteran, a former soldier named Marcus, strikes up a conversation with Jake during lunch. "What brings you here?" Marcus asks casually. Jake hesitates before answering. "I got in trouble," he mumbles. "This is part of my punishment." Marcus nods knowingly. "Been there," he says. But let me tell you something, punishment doesn't fix anything unless you decide to change. Are you ready to turn things around? Jake looks at Marcus, surprised by the question. I don't know, he admits. Well, think about it, Marcus advises. Every day is a chance to start fresh. The conversation stays with Jake long after he leaves the shelter. For the first time, he begins to consider what it might mean to live a better life. Months pass, and the ripple effects of Elena's actions continue to spread. The bikers complete their sentences and re-enter society with a newfound sense of purpose. Some pursue education or vocational training, while others volunteer regularly to give back to their communities. Jake, in particular, undergoes a dramatic transformation. He enrolls in a leadership program designed for former offenders and graduates at the top of his class. During his final presentation, he speaks candidly about his past mistakes and his commitment to making amends. I used to think power came from fear, he tells the audience. But I was wrong. Real power comes from lifting others up, not tearing them down. I owe a lot of that understanding to someone who showed me exactly how strong kindness can be. Though he never meets Elena face to face, Jake writes her a letter expressing his gratitude. In it, he apologizes for his actions and promises to dedicate his life to helping others. Elena reads the letter with a mix of emotions: surprise, satisfaction, and a touch of sadness for the pain caused along the way. Ultimately, however, she feels hopeful. Hopeful that even those who once sought to harm her can find redemption. Months have passed since the day Elena stood up to the bikers. Life has returned to a steady rhythm, but the impact of that moment lingers in her heart and mind. As she sits on a park bench one sunny afternoon, listening to the sounds of children playing and birds chirping, she reflects on everything that's happened. Elena remembers how scared she felt when the bikers first surrounded her. She recalls the tension in the air, the mocking laughter, and the way Jake sneered as he tossed her cane aside. But most of all, she remembers the quiet strength inside her, the voice that whispered, "You've trained for this. You're ready." She thinks about the crowd that gathered, cheering her on as she defended herself. Their support reminded her that she wasn't alone, that even in moments of danger, there are always people willing to stand up for what's right. And then there are the bikers. Though they caused her pain and fear, Elena doesn't hold on to anger or resentment. Instead, she feels compassion for them. She knows they were acting out of insecurity, trying to prove something to themselves and others. In a way, their downfall was inevitable. They built their power on intimidation, which crumbled the moment someone refused to be intimidated. As Elena sits quietly, soaking in the warmth of the sun, she realizes something important. The confrontation with the bikers wasn't just about standing up to bullies, it was about proving to herself and the world that true strength comes from within. It's not about how loudly you shout or how tough you act. It's about staying calm, trusting your instincts, and treating others with respect even when they don't deserve it. Elena's story teaches us many valuable lessons. Here are a few that anyone, whether young or old, can carry with them. 1. Appearances can be deceiving. When the bikers saw Elena, they assumed she was weak because she couldn't see. They judged her based on what they thought they knew about blindness. But appearances can trick us. Just because someone looks different or faces challenges doesn't mean they're any less capable. True strength often hides beneath the surface. 2. Courage comes in many forms. Courage isn't always about running into danger or fighting back. Sometimes, it's about standing still when everyone expects you to run. It's about speaking up when you feel afraid. And it's about believing in yourself, even when others doubt you. 3. Kindness is powerful. Even though the bikers treated Elena poorly, she didn't respond with hatred or revenge. She showed them kindness not by letting them win, but by giving them a chance to learn from their mistakes. Kindness is a superpower that can change hearts and minds. 4. Everyone has value. Elena proved that being blind doesn't make her less worthy. Her disability didn't define her, her actions did. Every person, no matter their background, abilities, or struggles, has value. It's up to us to recognize and celebrate that. 5. Resilience builds strength. Life threw Elena a curveball when she lost her sight, but she didn't let it break her. Instead, she adapted, trained, and grew stronger. Resilience means bouncing back from setbacks and finding new ways to thrive. These lessons aren't just for Elena, they're for all of us. Whether we're facing bullies, overcoming personal challenges, or simply trying to be better people, we can draw inspiration from her journey. One of the most beautiful outcomes of Elena's story is the way it brought people together. Before the incident, the neighborhood was just another busy urban area where people kept to themselves. Afterward, it transformed into a community united by shared values of kindness, courage, and respect. For example, local businesses started hosting events to raise awareness about disabilities and inclusivity. A bookstore organized a reading night featuring authors who write about overcoming adversity. A fitness center offered free classes for people with physical challenges, teaching them how to stay active and healthy. Schools also played a big role in fostering unity. Teachers encouraged students to form kindness clubs, where kids could brainstorm ways to make their peers feel included. One group decided to create buddy benches on playgrounds, special seats where lonely children could sit if they needed a friend. Other students would notice and invite them to play. Even strangers became friends through Elena's influence. At bus stops and coffee shops, people struck up conversations about her story. Some shared their own experiences with bullying or discrimination, while others expressed gratitude for the reminder to treat everyone with respect. Elena noticed these changes whenever she walked through the streets. People greeted her warmly, asking how she was doing or thanking her for inspiring them. Though she never sought fame, she felt proud knowing that her actions had sparked such positive growth. While Elena's story celebrates resilience and courage, it also carries an important message for those who bully others. If you've ever teased, mocked, or hurt someone because you thought they were weaker than you, take a moment to think about why you did it. Often, bullies act out of fear or insecurity. They want to feel powerful, so they target people they perceive as vulnerable. But hurting others doesn't make you strong, it makes you cruel. Real strength comes from lifting others up, not tearing them down. If you've been a bully, it's not too late to change. Start by apologizing to the people you've hurt. Then, commit to treating everyone with kindness and respect. It won't be easy. Changing habits takes time, but every step you take toward becoming a better person matters. Remember Jake and his gang? They made terrible choices, but they also learned from their mistakes. Through counseling, community service, and self-reflection, they began to understand the harm they caused. By the end of their journey, they weren't perfect, but they were trying. And sometimes, trying is enough. Elena's story reminds us that no matter how dark things may seem, hope always shines through. Whether you're facing personal struggles, dealing with bullies, or working to build a better community, remember that small actions can lead to big changes. Imagine a world where everyone stands up for what's right. Where people judge each other based on character, not appearance. Where kindness and empathy guide our decisions. That world might sound far away, but it starts with individuals like you and me. Every time you choose to help someone instead of ignoring them, you bring us closer to that brighter future. Every time you speak up against injustice, you inspire others to do the same. And every time you believe in yourself even when others doubt you, you prove that anything is possible. Elena's journey shows us that heroes aren't born, they're made. They're ordinary people who decide to rise above fear, doubt, and prejudice. They're teachers, parents, students, and neighbors. They're you. So, the next time you face a challenge, ask yourself, what would Elena do? Would she give up? Or would she dig deep, trust her instincts, and keep moving forward? The choice is yours. Before we close this chapter of Elena's story, let's leave you with one final thought. Sometimes, the quietest voices hold the most power. Those who speak softly, listen carefully, and act with purpose often leave the biggest impact. They remind us that strength isn't about noise or aggression, it's about conviction, compassion, and courage. Elena may not have shouted or raised her fists unnecessarily, but her actions spoke volumes. She showed the world that being underestimated isn't a weakness, it's an opportunity to surprise everyone, including yourself. As you go about your day, think about the ways you can channel Elena's spirit. Stand tall when others try to knock you down. Speak up when you see injustice. And always believe in your ability to make a difference. Because in the end, it's not about how others see you, it's about how you see yourself. And if you see yourself as strong, brave, and unstoppable, nothing can stop you.